This is Thomas again for Aim for Truth. I came indoors. It's a little windy outside, and Betsy is
I'm badgering him to continue his conversation with you.
because this is a new methodology we're using to do this. And anyway, because when I'm over here and I start complaining, she likes me to record it. So I'm going to say a few more things about the Mueller investigation. One of the most shocking things that came to our attention recently was through Michael McKibben and Leader Technology, the company that actually created the patent that created social networking, which we've been discussing now in audios as well as many posts on Truth News headlines, as well as a recent Anonymous Patriots intelligence report. And it was just shocking because what we found out in the end, it's the same people. It's Robert Mueller, it's Rod Rosenstein, it's James Comey, it's John Podesta. It's the same people. These people have taken over the patent office. They also did the Russian deal for uranium. And, of course, the pay-for-play through Hillary Clinton, $145 million. All of that is illegal. That completely 100% illegal, but it didn't come out until recently. And this is one of the strange things. I was just a minute ago bloviating and complaining about the fact that one of the things that has come up just recently because someone released it, and it hasn't even hardly hit the news at all, is that Mueller had a conversation with Matt Tate, who is now the person who is finally identified as the person that Peter W. Smith had supposedly asked to collude with Russia and intervene in the American presidential election. Well, of course, that's complete nonsense. First off, Peter W. Smith wasn't even connected to Trump. He knew General Flynn's son. He didn't have a connection to Trump. He wasn't connected to the Trump team. That's nonsense. And even if he was, what really did happen? Well, the reason it was behind closed doors and Mueller didn't leak it, and Mueller didn't leak it to the press, was because nothing was found, because it was probably a simple conversation between two people saying the following. Gee, Mr. Tate, seeing that you are a big cyber warrior and ex-British spy who now works as a professor in Austin, Texas, and has his own corporate intelligence group, would you please look into what they're saying all over the news, that Hillary Clinton's 33,000 emails were probably hacked by the Russians and everybody else? So could you do what you can do, go out there on the Al Gore's internets and see if you can't find for me, let's talk in Texan because they would have been speaking with an accent. Can you find for me that Russian information? Because I'd like to have some oppositional research on that Hillary Clinton. Okay? It was probably over a beer, and that's probably as far as it went, because unless Matt Tate wants to state that his corporate intelligence group somehow did find these 33,000 emails. Well, that's all completely incidental and silly, and now, of course, Peter W. Smith is dead. He died mysteriously at age 81, admittedly, but 10 days after he met with Wall Street Journal. And I put a terrible joke in recently that I wonder what they fed him for dinner. The point is that Mueller's investigation is ridiculous. Now, I want to go back to the fact that we have said from the beginning, from day one, and even some anonymous patriots in the conclave do not agree with my personal opinion. But it has been my personal opinion from the beginning that the only person that would go down in the Trump investigation would be Paul Manafort. Now, he should be the last person that they should be investigating because he's represented by a law firm called WilmerHale, which is the law firm that Mueller and 6 of his lawyers, of the 17 lawyers that are spending hundreds of millions of our American taxpayer dollars for the 3rd investigation on Trump, the first 2 finding nothing. This investigation is completely bogus, and they should have recused themselves because of their conflict of interest. Andrew Weissman also has conflict of interest. They all have conflict of interest. And so we said this from the beginning. Why did Comey leak to the New York Times and then admit that he leaked to the New York Times? And in the same leak, and admitting the leak, said that it was to get a special counsel appointed. And then, of course, somehow Rod Rosenstein appoints his best friend, Robert Mueller, who is their teacher. Robert Mueller is the teacher of Comey and Rod Rosenstein. So, why was that done to begin with? Because they had to cover themselves. These are the same culprits involved with covering up for 911.
And who paid for the dossier?
Oh, well, now it's coming out that, as I said from the beginning, we know that a requisition was written for $50,000 to pay for the 17th installment by Comey and the FBI. But in the press, it kept saying that $100,000 was paid for the last installment, and I couldn't figure that out. And I kept saying, no, I think they've made a mistake. Perhaps they haven't made a mistake because now people are accusing John McCain of being the person who gave the last 50,000. And when you think about this, the dossier, no one really had it in their possession. Fusion GPS was releasing this as propaganda through leaks to these different groups.
And remember, also, I think he was serializing it and making money on all these people.
Well, you said that from the beginning,
I
Betsy.
don't think they knew he was selling it to anybody who wanted it.
You said that from the beginning, and I wasn't ready to stick my neck out on that one that far, and yet I think you're right, because it sounds as if the last installment, which names Alexei Gubarev as being the hacker of the DNC, and now he's suing both Fusion, BuzzFeed, both here and in Britain. He has lawsuits. A lawsuit in Britain is against Orbis Business, which is the British spy group that helped Fusion GPS create the dossier, along with Alexandria Chalupa and the Atlantic Council with Dmitry Alperovich. We've already talked about this so many times. And through Ukraine, they came up not only with the Paul Manafort $27 million ledger nonsense, but also later other Paul Manafort accusations. And so they went after Paul Manafort. And my point is, none of them can, because of conflict of interest. They all worked from the same law firm, and they all represented him at some point because he was one of their biggest clients.
Yeah, but Thomas, who in Washington is going to be left to do any work?
Well, that's the problem. They need to fire like 100 Department of Justice lawyers.
But we think of all the unemployed attorneys out there. I mean, they could be hired, and people without work. I mean, we could just get rid of those folks, and we could hire all the unemployed people who need high-paying jobs in Washington, right?
Correct. Jeff Sessions needs to have a job fair for lawyers because he needs so many lawyers to go after these criminals.
But Jeff Sessions needs to turn in his resignation and find another job.
Well, he's not doing a good job, that's for sure. So, going back to this, it's the same criminals. So, it's funny that here you have Mueller supposedly carrying out an investigation. We said from the beginning, there's only one thing going to come out of this investigation, and that he's going to exonerate his good buddy Comey, and he's going to cover his own tracks. Because remember, he's also responsible for 911. He's also responsible for the implementation of the Patriot Act and the U.S. Freedom Act, and back and forth between the Department of Justice and the FBI, Comey and Mueller have gone, plus also out to HSBC, basically one of the most criminal banks there is in the world, and they both have sat on the board and worked for them. These guys work for criminal hedge funds, but they were just coming in to cover for themselves. And now we find out, as we have harped on again and again, on December 14th, the WikiLeaks reveals that Podesta said, oh my gosh, we did an analysis, and Hillary's weakest point is her connection to Russia, that she's in bed with Russia. We can't use that. We have to turn that around. We have to create what is a spin campaign, a propaganda campaign. We have to get ahead of the narrative, as they call it. So they got ahead of the narrative and they said, Trump is in bed with Russia. And we know this because Trump hacked the DNC. The DNC was controlled by Hillary and Podesta and his emails. Remember that. So they controlled all of it. Only Dmitry Alperovich ever saw it. He's a Russian. This was part of their cover-up plan. It was their attempt to turn the tables around and use the narrative that was Hillary's weakest point in the entire election, that she did a deal with Uranium One and that her Clinton Foundation has received $145 million, and Bill himself spoke with, because we now know that Bill literally asked the State Department if he could go over and meet with these oligarchs, the very ones who donated to him, and meet with Putin. And now we find out that Bill met with Putin. Isn't that amazing? And was paid $500,000 for a few-minute lecture. Isn't that just grand? So why didn't that get prosecuted or come to the Department of Justice attention? when there was a book on it, actually 2 books that mentioned it, and a movie.
Schweitzer's book, Clinton Cash.
Clinton Cash, of course, but there was a second book, and there was a movie
Yeah.
that just revealed all of these things. How can people not know this? Why wasn't she prosecuted? Here is why it has come to the attention of the world, and this is so strange. They tried to hide what happened 8 years ago in relationship to the Russians, because when the Russians get involved, the mafia is involved, especially with Uranium One. So the trucking company and the bank that they laundered the money through to put the pressure on American uranium sources, which then they trucked from America to Canada, because the whole front it's actually a Canadian company that they made the agreement with. It just so happens that the Canadian company is owned by Russia. And so they sent Russian guys in to muscle their situation to make sure it happened, to even pressure Clinton, to pressure even, as the reports now indicate, the bribery was known by Obama himself and by the entire Obama administration, because it was a 8-year-long Department of Justice FBI case that was prosecuted, in both the banker and the trucking guy, who were Russians, they had to pay fines and they went to jail. So this recently came out secretly. Someone revealed this, and it was through a very odd way. I think it was through a strange FOIA request that then someone else picked up, and then I think the Caller picked it up, and then the Hill picked it up. But now they're quoting these, the Hill and Circa as their sources in congressional investigations. Isn't that funny? Finally, these alternative media, or in some cases,
the alternative media.
Pardon me?
We in the alternative
media are having an influence here.
Yes.
And so what is now happening is the alternative media is dredging up all of the other crimes of Comey, Mueller, and Rosenstein, and sometimes McCabe, and that they've been working together for a very long time. Not so much McCabe, but the other 3 go all the way back to, in the 90s, the early 90s, working with Podesta, Larry Summers, James Chandler, and Stephen Crocker to steal patents that then became the big tech companies. And so the tech lords, or I would like to call them the tech warlords, because they're fake in most cases. They're dummies.
Sultans of Silicon Valley.
The Sultans of Silicon Valley, as Betsy calls them. So what we see here is those are Obama's best friends, and so on and so forth. So Mueller has been protecting that all along too. Why didn't I know that? Why could I have been surprised for a second when I saw the list of the people who gathered in 1993 with IBM to say, oh no, you can't have a computer that doesn't have a backdoor to the NSA and the Department of Defense and the CIA. You certainly can't send it overseas without the CIA knowing everything that goes through your computer if it's another country. We're not going to let our technology out. That's always been the case, folks. It's a myth to think that the internet isn't owned by America. It's owned by the American military, and it's owned by the American government through the cables and the government regulation of those cables and the subsidies we pay for those cables. And the servers are all controlled by Cisco, and the Google and all the search engines were controlled by DARPA's In-Q-Tel Memex. And now we find out that later technology invented the social networks that everything on the internet is based upon. Everything that you sign into, any system you sign into, that is a social network platform called a groupware that was created by Michael McKibben and his later technology, the geniuses he worked through, himself included. And so we see who went after him. He didn't understand. I didn't understand. Mueller has been corrupt that long that he literally was there when James Chandler wrote the Espionage Act and all of the new patent laws that make it possible that they can take the patent from anyone they want. And you will be put in jail if you even tell someone. This is shocking, but it is true. We came across this recently from another man who has many patents in the energy world, and he told us about this, and it was such a shock. But then to finally get to meet Michael McKibben, the very man who basically, you can say, Facebook, and not only Facebook, but YouTube, Google Docs, all of them, Instagram, all of them, any social, pardon me?
Twitter, don't forget
Twitter.
And so
All of them.
that's why I say we can use this technology to get back and slam them with the information truth bombs.
Absolutely. And it's coming out that these truth bombs work, Betsy. It's so, so true. Because when the truth bombs keep being said over and over again, and then they connect the dots of these truth bombs and they say, whoa, look at the biography of Robert Mueller. This is a criminal record, a rap sheet that is of the worst criminal in America, and yet he's held the job of the top law enforcement agent. They are not only covering up, they are the criminals, and then they cover up for themselves and they cover up for their crony buddies. And so Mueller had to be called in, as we pointed out, but our mistake was that we said only Paul Manafort would go down. And that didn't take a genius. That was sheer inductive and or deductive logic, because we knew that there were 5 investigations after Manafort for his work in Ukraine. Why? Because he's more or less the Republican, what you call oppositional research group. Paul Manafort works with Roger Stone. So what is it? Stone, Manafort, Kelly, and Black, I think, is kind of the counterpoint to Fusion GPS and the Podesta group. And so when you see these oppositional research groups working for either the Democrats or the Republicans, what they are lie mills. They're lie machines. They are rumor mongers. They are the echo chamber of lies. They are Karl Rove spin. It's the tail that wags the dog. These guys can lie so well, and they know the bigger the lie, the more it is easily believed. And so they know exactly what to do. Paul Manafort went over and took Yanukovych, and after he'd already been kicked out by the Orange Revolution, got him elected again as president of Ukraine. So he came over and helped Trump get elected, but he was only his campaign manager in charge of it for 2 months, and Trump fired him afterwards. So we said Paul Manafort would go down, and now it's obvious that Paul Manafort will go down, because Andrew Weissman has been called in, one of the most corrupt lawyers in Washington, D.C. This guy is so corrupt that most of his cases get overturned in the appellate courts under appeal. Because why? How is it they get overturned? Because of his methodology is so illegal, but it convinces a jury. And so he'll win a case, but then it will get overturned. Or many, not even jury cases, it can convince all kinds of people because it's propaganda. Andrew Weissman, recently called in as, I think, the 18th lawyer to do the Trump-Russian collusion case, which I promise you will be well over $100 million we will spend on the 3rd version of this, which is nothing more than to cover up for Mueller. But now Mueller is going to use the testimony of a British spy in America working at an American university with his own corporation still active as he's teaching at a university, as he claims to still be working for the GCHQ. Hello, is there something wrong with this story? We're going to believe Matt Tate? I don't think so, folks. And we're not going to believe Matt Tate's story just because Peter W. Smith is dead. So, my point is, Mueller's depth of evil and cover-up for his own crimes and the crime of the people that he represents, back and forth between Democrats and Republicans. They're like a ping pong ball, and back and forth between the Justice Department and between the FBI and sometimes the CIA, and always, CIA hedge funds, CIA law firms, and CIA banks, and basically brokers and asset management companies. That's who Mueller and Comey work for when they're not working for the government, covering up the crimes of White House families, basically, as well as long-standing bureaucratic, evil appointees like James Chandler III, who was Bush's national security advisor, I believe, either Clinton or Bush's, but he was a national security advisor, the man who writes the Espionage Act, the man who changes the patent laws, the man who steals the patents, the man who creates Silicon Valley. Are we going to just sit back and not put together 2 plus 2 and look at their biographies? Simply look at their biography and you will see a rap sheet that is worse than any criminal that they are supposedly supposed to go out and get. By the way, Have they arrested any criminals? Name a criminal that Comey, as the head of the FBI, ever arrested. Name anyone.
Martha Stewart.
Martha Stewart.
See, they always in the end go after the girls.
They went after the girls, as Betsy said. Martha Stewart. She is such a criminal. Because, one time I saw her fold the corners on a bed sheet incorrectly. I think that was her only crime.
Okay.
Oh, no, insider trading?
No.
Oh, wait, don't get me started on insider trading, Comey and Mueller.
You need to stay right here on this path, honey. Okay, we have plenty of time to do another recording on Martha Stewart. Okay?
Poor Martha Stewart. Anyway, Mueller is trying now, because of the Trump effect, the wheels are falling off of his car. He has launched an airplane and he doesn't have any landing gear. He is going down. His crimes, there will be a special investigator appointed to go after him and Comey and Rothstein's collusion. There has to be, because of McCabe's wife. Just think about the collusion involved in Terry McAuliffe and McCabe's wife. I mean, the collusion is so thick. Not only the Russian uranium won, because of some Russians who they tried to secretly prosecute. Isn't that amazing? But the prosecution went on for 8 years during the practically entire Obama administration, because that's how long the uranium manipulation happened. Because think of it, folks. They want to state that Russia's our enemy, but then they want to give them the uranium to build the nuclear weapons that create the fact that we have to create new nuclear weapons because we gave them the new technology and the uranium to make the new nuclear bombs.
Yeah, but then they don't tell us about thorium.
No, they don't tell us about the fact that we don't have to use any of that, because thorium could replace all nuclear power plants. And nuclear power plants are only good for one thing, technically, because other forms of energy do better and they're more efficient, is to produce plutonium, to create the very enriched uranium, the result of enriched uranium. So in other words, the plutonium, we might as well just give our plutonium. We might as well build the missiles for Russia. But remember, they've never been our enemy. We've never fought against them in history. They're only our Cold War enemy, so that the military-industrial complex, which is always international, who works for both sides, who again works out of the Highland Forum, which we were the first ones to ever pull them out and bust them. And I just want to stick in a plug for Anonymous Patriots and to give the conclave, yes, conclave, stand up and take some applause, because Leader Technology said they didn't know about Highland Forums until they read our articles. Hardly anyone did. But who did Bannon meet with the second that he was no longer the chief advisor to the president?
He met with two people, Thomas.
Correct.
Not just one.
Exactly. He met first with Henry Kissinger and then with Andrew Marshall, the head of Highland Forums, who everyone calls Yoda, because basically all modern weapons and technology and death by war comes from one man, the man who runs a committee that is filled with international interests that are all militarizing and weaponizing things. But the number one thing they do is they work for a venture capital corporation called In-Q-Tel that uses the Science Applications International Corporation and Leidos to build their weapons, to steal patents, and then to write certifications for those patents from then on, and control the patents from then on, and all modifications to those patents. It is a trick, and it's all run through Highland Forums. And it was ran by Richard O'Neill, but on one side, but it was ran by the head of the Office of Net Assessment, which was headed by Andrew Marshall, who they, as I say, call Yoda, but I would rather call Darth Vader. And I would rather call Henry Kissinger the evil emperor, because all of foreign policy in America back to Daddy Bush was ran by Henry Kissinger, and all weaponization and militarization and where the military-industrial complex is headed, especially with cyber warfare and cyber tech, which is what In-Q-Tel is about. DARPA is about the other weapons of destruction, but In-Q-Tel is about using the internet, Facebook as a weapon, using Jeff Bezos' Amazon computer banks as a storage weapon, really, for the CIA. Because, of course, if you think Jeff Bezos now doesn't have access to all of the CIA, you are out of your mind if you think that Facebook was created by Mark Zuckerberg, or that it isn't used as a social experiment and social, basically psyops for the national security, the CIA, the FBI, and all the other 17 departments, for all that matter, for intelligence. They all use Facebook. Why? Because it's the number one tool for experimentation and social manipulation. And it's very effective, and they have so many, just read Vault 7, so many NSA programs, CIA programs, for going in and simply doing queries, finding who you want. You can go and, don't even get me started. There are 20 programs where you can go in and find out any Islamic fascist in America. And yes, they can pinpoint anyone on the internet and where you're at. Absolutely 100%. If you don't think so, you're mistaken. And they can also triangulate it by simply the fact that your computer is near your phone. So if your computer is anywhere near your phone, they can get your exact pinpoint and drop they can send a drone to drop a bomb on you and be 100% accurate. And this is all known. All you have to do is look at Vault 7, look at the Snowden revelations, look at what William Binney revealed, look at what Dennis Montgomery revealed, all these whistleblowers. It's called X keystroke, and X keystroke is used to go into Facebook and look up anything that you want. And then they create a box for you called Marina. They give you your own marina to dock your own boat, and they don't want to let you out of your marina once they get you in there. And then Stellar Wind connects them all, and on and on and on and on. There's so many of these programs that they're being invented all the time, and you cannot keep up with them. These are just the ones that we know of, that we know and have been confirmed by other whistleblowers and other people in these organizations to say that they're true. So Mueller has those capacities. He could stop the Islamic fascists in this country. Did he? No. Did Mueller stop any of the mass shootings in America? No. Did Comey figure any of them out? No. Did Mueller or Comey ever figure out any of the mass shootings in America? No. These guys are criminals. If you think a little bit further, you'll realize that they actually conducted these things under false flag conditions for legal propaganda in America allowed by the NDAA because of Obama changing the NDAA every year that he was in office. And so now we live in a police state, whether you know it or not. And they'll tell you, here's what they'll tell you. We're not in a police state anymore. The Patriot Act is no longer in effect. It was repealed. And people will just go on, conversation over. I'm a lunatic. I'm a conspiracy theorist. Incorrect. Obama rewrote it. Changed hardly any of it except to make the cyber intelligence surveillance better and more pervasive, and then he called it the U.S. Patriot Act. I mean U.S. Freedom Act. Who wants to talk about that? Nobody. Everyone wants to only get a piece of the pie, and if you only get a piece of Mueller's history, then you'll understand what he's doing. He's not going anywhere near the truth of Russian collusion, which is Larry Summers, John Podesta, Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama were in bed with Putin. Look at the tech city that they built for them. They brought our enemy up to snuff so that we could continue the Cold War. That's what has been going on since I was in the NSA a long time ago. Okay? We gave Russia our space program. We gave Russia our satellite program. I've studied this, and we gave them our nuclear program. I mean, we have given them everything so that they can be our enemy, so they can contend with us. But in the end, we beat them. The USSR collapsed. Russia collapsed. We stole their gold. We manipulated them. Goldman Sachs owns more of Russia than Russia does. And the oligarchs are only controlled, the oligarchs created by basically what you could almost say is a mafia form of Goldman Sachs that goes into foreign countries and rewrites all the national companies into the control of oligarchs. This is what they do in every country. They've gone into every ex-Soviet Union country and done this. They've done it in Turkmenistan, Azerbaijan. They've done it in, don't even get me started. This is the reality of what Russia is. We are stepping on the neck of Russia, but Putin is happy, being a real mafia boss that he is. He controls the oligarchs. When they put money in offshore accounts, he puts them in jail, tortures them until he gets the numbers, gets the money back, puts it in his own account. That's why he's considered to be the second richest person on the earth. The Queen of England is the first. Rothschild is the third. Putin now, because of what has happened to the dismembering of all of the satellite countries of Russia, Where do you think that money went? It didn't go to Yeltsin. It went to the Russian oligarchs. It went to Blavatnik. It went to Leonard Blavatnik, one of the top people who owns the biggest share, except for Russia's share, of the largest gas company in Russia. And where does Blavatnik spend his money? That's right, Mitch McConnell, the Attorney General of New York, who's going after Manafort, McCain, Lindsey Graham, and a whole bunch of Democrats. So the real big Russian oligarchs are paying both sides, and that's why we only have one system. We don't have Republicans and we have Democrats. We only have one system now. And right now, our system is, that's right, Trumpism. He ain't a Republican and he ain't a Democrat.
He's a national sovereignty.
He's a national sovereignty guy, as Betsy just said. He is not a globalist, he's a nationalist.
And if he's not, we the people are pushing him in that direction.
No, for sure, Betsy, he is. And we the people are pushing him and Bannon more and more in that direction. And now we see that they're getting a lot of leverage and a lot of traction. And what we are also seeing is the deep state is crumbling. So be encouraged, folks. Just because you didn't see it in the news, we didn't see it in the news. This news was so tiny. But when you look at it, what did it do? It revealed and brought to the fore uranium-1. Nobody knew these Russians are being prosecuted in America and have been for the investigated and prosecuted for 8 years. So don't give up on Jeff Sessions. He's probably started a slew of investigations. Remember, folks, if Donald Trump says publicly someone must be investigated, the Department of Justice works for the executive branch. Don't forget that. They don't work for the judicial branch. People don't understand this. All those federal agencies work for the president. The Supreme Court stands on its own and has all of its chief justices and all of its state chief justices and all its appellate courts and all the federal courts in those states. The Department of Justice works for the president. Comey, the FBI works for the president. The NSA works for the president. Clapper worked for the president. Nothing happens in any of the 17 intelligence agencies unless it is directed by the president. He gets a briefing every day of even what the U.S. Treasury Intelligence Department does. Remember that. He can fire them all.
I don't think they know that.
No, they don't seem to know that.
I think they have these bottlenecks in each of these agencies where you've got Obama hangovers. And what we need to do is keep putting pressure and more pressure on those bottlenecks until they explode.
Yes, that is what I would think. But a new thought has come to me, Betsy. We have to, and Jeff Sessions is a bottleneck, but we don't know how many investigations he started. And Rod Rosenstein not being kicked out. Remember, Trump was asked, should I kick him out? Trump was also asked everyone, he said this publicly, should I kick McCabe out? And in both cases, he said no. Why? Because they're revealing who they are by staying right where they are, because they're using their power to do illegal things, and those things are coming out, and they're putting the noose around their neck, and they're jumping off the scaffold on their own, and it's just hysterical.
Well, that's why I always thought that there wasn't more ruckus about Mueller being placed where he was, because as soon as he was in that position, he had to reveal himself. The end game is his revelation.
Absolutely. The revelation of his own evil. So we're going to sign off now because this is an experiment. And if this works, then because people are begging us to do more of these audios. And so we would do them because, as I said in the last one, I'll do it as long as you have tape to record me, Betsy. And so she's figured out a new way to record it, and it makes it even easier. So we want to just say, remember, the revolution, the purple revolution was to overthrow Trump. Doesn't matter. There is the anti-revolution, and that anti-revolution is against those who in 1913 started a revolution against the United States, U.S. Constitution, and U.S. Bill of Rights. And until Trump, it was going to be a complete overthrow. Trump was elected. That revolution, the new revolution, has started. It is a second American revolution.
And it's red, white, and blue.
And it's red, white, and blue because Betsy Ross made the flag.